Hi, welcome back. In the previous tutorial we made a simple slow motion effect where the world would slow down around the player whilst they move through it unaffected. Okay, to just show you that in action. Here I am just moving through the world whilst everything's normal, but then once I press the button the world slows down, but I was still unaffected. Okay, that's all well and good, but we're going to add some more functionality to it. So we're going to add a power level so that time cannot be constantly slowed down by the player. So we're just going to go back into our blueprint. I already had it open in this tab, but if you don't remember to get there, it's on the first person BP, blueprint, and then you want your first person character. Okay, now I've not changed anything since the last tutorial except this boolean value. You might notice its name has now changed to time slow. And when time is slowed down it's set to true, and when time is normal it's set to false, just to make the naming and setting of the variable a little bit easier. So we want to create this power levels, so we need a new variable to hold that. So go over here to this variables again. We're going to click the add variable. I'm going to name it power level. Now, as you can see, this is automatically made into the last variable type we did, which was time slow, so it's automatically made another boolean. We don't want that, we want either an integer or a float. I'm going to do float so I can get decimal values. And I want to hit compile, so that creates the variable so that it can actually be used in the blueprint, and then we can set its default value. Then you want to compile it again, so that it has that set default value. So I'm actually going to just come up here a bit, and I'm going to press C. Now you can put this anywhere. You can put it right alongside if you want. Tell you what, yeah, just put it in here, so we know it's all kept together and this is all our code. And in this comment, I'm going to write power regen. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow our power levels to regenerate. So we're going to set this up first so that we can automatically regenerate power over time before we set any discharge. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to get the event begin play. So what this does is when the game starts, this is called, and it will call whatever it's told to do here. So I'm going to get a branch or an if statement. And then I'm also going to right click, remember, and get set timer. Okay, just make this a bit bigger so everything fits in. And I want to set this to false. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in time slow, going to get that value, and then I'm going to connect these up. Now you don't have to do this bit. You could literally just have it set from that to that, so it does it all the time. What I'm doing here is saying that when time is normal, so when it's not being slowed down, then let the power regenerate. So I'm going to set in this time bit here, I'm going to set it to 1 second, 1.0, I'm going to have it loop. So that means it's just going to call itself over and over again. Okay, so right now it's not going to do anything. But as you can see, it says function name, so this is what the timer will call. So we need to create a function to let this happen. Okay, so go over here, you can see this bit says functions. So we want to add a new function, and I'm just going to name it power regen. Okay, so this is empty, as you can see all around here. So this just provides a new space for us to write a new function which is going to be called by our timer. Okay, so I found this to be really the most efficient way to do it in blueprints. So we want to get our power level, and we want to set our power level. But in between, we want to get a float, add float. So float plus float, or integer plus integer if you've got it as an integer variable. And every second we're going to add 5. So we're going to add 5 to our power level. That's very simple. Now every second that time is not slowed down, you're going to add 5 to your power level. But what happens if we want to keep it at 100? Well, we can deal with that, but we'll deal with that later. I'll show you how to do that later. Let's just get the discharge done as well first. So go back to your event graph, which is here. And we'll go over here. Now I'm just going to move these across because we'll be putting a branch statement in there later. So what we want is we want another timer. So I'm going to do set timer. And I'm going to connect these up. Now as you can see over here though, we did not actually enter our function name, so we want to go back to our first set timer in the power regen, and we want to name it power regen. We want to type that function case sensitive into the function name so that this timer knows what to call. Okay, and over here we're going to set this to loop, and I'm going to have this call every 0.1 of a second, mainly for debugging at this rate. So we're going to need a new function as we're using another timer. So we'll add a new function. Okay. And we're going to rename this slow time discharge. I'm naming it slow time discharge. You could just have power discharge. It depends if you want to add more powers in. This way you can add more in and have each one discharge the power amount uniquely. So in here we're going to want to set our power level and get our power level, and we're going to do a float minus a float, and I'm going to do 10. Okay, so every 0.1 of a second power level will decrease by 10. So right now that does nothing because we've not told it whether to end if they run out of power. So we're going to do that as well. But first, just before we get started as well, add a new branch statement in here. Get your time slow variable and set it to that, just so that when it's checking itself, it's checking if time slow is actually active, and if it is, then decrease it. And you'll see why in a minute. Okay, and we're going to want a new branch statement then. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our power level. And we're going to see, we're going to type float and look for this greater than or equal to float or integer. And we're going to see if this is greater than 10. Because if it's not greater than 10, then we don't want to minus 10 off it and go into negative numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that up there. So if it's greater than 10, just minus 10 off the entire power value. However, if it's not, then we want to set our power level to 0. As our power can be increased by 5, you you do want to do this, just because it can go from like 15 to 5, and then it could go to minus 5 if you didn't set any of these branch statements. So we'll set that to 0, so it just stays 0, and then we're going to get our set global time dilation. And because the power's run out, we want to return this to normal, so set it to 1.0. Set our custom time dilation, so our actor, our character, and we're going to want 1.0 as well. Because as you remember, we had to change their custom time dilation whilst based on the value of how much the world was slowed down. 1 over that value. And then we're going to want to set time slow to 0, to false, sorry, because time is no longer slowed. And then here's an important one, you want to clear the timer. You want to clear the timer that is calling slow time discharge. Because otherwise, if you don't clear that, it's going to keep calling and calling and calling this. Okay, so now we go back to our event graph. Can compile all this. And we want to add our function name into here. So slow time discharge. Now remember, spelling is very important, so is case sensitivity. Okay, so if we compile that and we click play, there's the world in normal, and then I'm going to slow it down. After a second, everything returns back to normal. Now I've waited a couple of seconds, the world should slow down, and everything's back to normal pretty quickly. So that's how we do our power levels. You know, you might want to go back into the slow time discharge and set this something more reasonable, like sorry, that's the wrong one. -1 every second. And then you want to check if that's greater than or equal to 1. And then you want to go into here, and this is an optional step. But if you want to save doing all this and then it turning out they don't have the right amount of power, we can do exactly what we did here. In fact, we can actually hold Control and just left click on both of them. Control C to copy, Control V to paste, put our condition in. So we're actually going to check if they have enough power to even be able to attempt to slow down time. If not, then there's no reason to calculate anything and the button press does nothing. Okay, so there you have it, a nice power variable to add in to make your game have a bit more functionality. In the next one, we're going to actually add a HUD value so that the player can actually see visually how much power they have left. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to see more. If you did not like the video, then give it a thumbs down and comment below if your opinions are otherwise or if you have any advice or questions. Okay, thanks.